Welcome to the Prep Baseball Report North Carolina podcast. I'm Brandon Hall, the Mid-Atlantic Director of Scouting. He's Matt Payne, our North Carolina Director of Scouting. We're both here in North Carolina. And Matt, it's been a while since we've done this, but happy to be back on the podcast.
It has been a while, but always enjoy doing them and looking forward to doing some more.
My wife told me this morning, I don't think we've done a podcast since Georgia's won the last two national titles. So I may be jeopardizing our run here as a big Georgia fan. I grew up in Atlanta before moving to North Carolina. I may be jeopardizing our run of national titles with this podcast rebooting, but I'm willing to take that chance to get information out about the players we see.
That's bold right there. I know how big a Georgia fan you are. So three-peat's hard anyway, So Kirby needs a break.
Well, don't think the way my mind works. If they don't win it next year, we won't stop this in a big hurry. So, hey, we got a ton of things that we're going to be excited to talk to baseball fans about as we progress the podcast on. We're adding multimedia, we're adding video, we're trying to do more things on social media, we're trying to highlight more players. But looking back, the podcast gives us a chance to communicate with people in a little bit different way, talk about players in a little bit different way, other than just writing. I think it also gives us a chance to put faces with names. And as many high school games as you saw last year, as many high school games as I saw last year, gives us a chance to reflect on those things. And then people can, hopefully see us at games and talk to us and kind of understand how hard we're working to bring the information, but also to know the talents across the state.
No doubt. And I think when you do this, you can say some things or put things differently than you do when you try to put pen to paper and put it out there. And then some people may rather listen than read what we write anyway.
Well, I joke all the time too. I'm a baseball guy. I mean, I can get down and I can write it. And, some of our guys that work for us are better writers than others, and some of them can't write at all, and God bless them. But, sitting around and talking is what baseball guys do. And so hopefully this is something that takes off and gives us a chance to really connect with the fans that are out there.
For sure.
We got coming up our first big event of the winter. It's going to be our second event, but it's really our first showcase, high talent event with the Preseason All-State starting. And, I know it's one of your favorite events of the year with the Preseason All-State. So we got 4 this year. We're going to open up with the South in Waxhaw, just outside of Charlotte on Sunday. What are you looking forward to most with these winter events?
They're exciting every year. And, it usually happens after we have a little downtime, don't run events. So getting back around the kids and every year it seems like guys show up you haven't seen in 2 or 3 months, and the first thing you notice is how much their bodies changed over the winter.
Right.
And guys are dedicated to the weight room and speed and agility, and seeing those bodies mature and the work they put in is always a fun time for me.
Well, I joke. I've got people in our cul-de-sac, and I got a couple of 8th graders that are getting ready for their seasons, and seeing that transition, that growth, even this past week with the East Coast Dodgers, of guys that we saw when they were 7th and 8th graders, and now we're seeing them as 9th and 10th graders. And, that transition, that transformation from boy to man is really starting. And then you see guys that, maybe we haven't seen, like you said, in a year, and then they show up and they've completed that transformation. There's man strength in their hands. They're handling the bat in a lot different way. They're spinning the ball differently. So as much as we try to go on, projection and really saying, okay, this is what a player has a chance to be, it can take hold very quickly, especially with the way some of these guys are spinning the baseball now. And, watching that hand strength, that grip strength translate into stuff on the mound it's especially fun for me with my background as a pitching guy. And, I'm sure from your standpoint, you probably enjoy a little bit more of the hitting side and letting the ball fly in those big cages.
No doubt. And each year you see guys who they clean up their swing a little bit, clean up their pre-pitch a little bit. You see them starting to figure stuff out, and you can look at that guy and say he has a chance to have a big spring, big summer, and he's going to open some eyes.
Yeah, and one of the things that we have to be careful of is guys are coming right out of workouts. Their arm speeds may be going through that transitions. They may be spraying the ball a little bit. Maybe the velocity in a bullpen's a little bit higher than what it'll play in a game when they're throwing every 6th day and going through that. But it gives us a really good glimpse of what they have a chance to be. But I think one of the important factors of what we do is we take this glimpse and then we're going to go see 300 high school games this spring, and so we can kind of marry the um, the evaluation from the indoor setting, the evaluation from a showcase setting, to the evaluation in game. And I think that has an important piece to what we do in telling our story to the college coaches and pro scouts that subscribe to us.
No doubt. And I think it's hard for kids at times, but we don't expect their best number this time of year. And
Right.
college coaches and pro scouts don't either. It's kind of a baseline of here's where I am coming out of my off-season workout. It's going to get better as the year goes.
And the name's slipping my mind, but we had a right-handed pitcher with us to the future games last year that showed up at preseason All-State. Tall right-hander. He started game 3 for us. So
Trey
the
Roberts.
Dirtbags were who?
Trey Roberts.
Trey Roberts. Trey Roberts was at preseason All-State last year, and it was okay. The stuff was okay, but just standing behind him and watching how long his limbs were and how athletic he moved and the rhythm he had for just a long, lanky frame. I didn't care what the stuff played up to be, because you're sitting there going, man, that guy's got a chance to throw really hard, and he was showing you enough command in the bullpen. And then we tracked him. We tracked him a little bit in the high school season. We tracked him definitely in the summer, and eventually we're able to offer him a spot in our future games team. And, he goes down to Atlanta and Lake Point to get to Team Missouri and throws in front of 400 college coaches. And his outing, as I remember, was a pretty tough one because it was actually raining as he started. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't pristine. But again, that idea of what college coaches are looking for, we all want to see a guy at his best so we know. We all would really like to see a guy really terribly kind of fail. How does he handle failure? What is the body language like? What does he come back and do his next outing? But we get a ton of information out of just about every environment we see players. And so with Trey's progress and what we saw preseason All-State, what we saw future games, what we saw in between, gave us a lot of intel in terms of who he is as a person, the kind of character he has, the competitive level he has. We've seen him pretty good.
Another guy, an older guy, Matthew Driver, I believe, came to an All-State last year.
Yep.
Gets an invite to a pro case, starts opening some eyes, and then this fall, I believe he's at Flodar.
Yep.
And you keep hearing his name from college coaches all the time, trying to get that background, and the kid's really made a jump.
He has, and it's a family that his older brother was a late bloomer as well. But Matthew's story is really interesting because he was kind of a left behind player for a while, and through training and regiment and adjusting his lifestyle and really diving into what makes pitchers tick and what can force pitchers to make some gains, he's really bought into that stuff. I saw him this fall at Flodar, and it's pretty electric. And he's going to be on our PBR JUCO top 150 list. I think that those lists are coming out this week, maybe, in terms of the draft stuff as we start to prepare for the junior college season. But Flodar is a team that's going to be within Region 10 and probably a top 25 team in the country to start. Them in Gaston College, which is the other junior college in that area that I think in the Region 10 Division I scope have a chance to really do some damage on the national level if they get there.
It's hard to believe they'll be kicking off their seasons here in a couple of weeks.
I know. It's I called one of the coaches from Gaston the other day, and I said, "You guys are wasting all the weather. We've been in the 50s. It's been a little wet. We've been in the 50s. They're screwed on opening day.
Yeah,
it's going to be freaking miserable." So,
those coming at some point.
Let's dive into the preseason All-State South coming up this Sunday in Waxhaw. A little bit smaller roster than some of our other preseason All-States. Because we're about a month out, and we get that. But we also trying to get in as many of these things, see as many players as we can. And Matt, it's a roster that I'm kind of really intrigued by. We're going to see some guys that we've seen in the past. We're going to see some names that I've heard a bunch about. Is there anybody on that roster as you kind of just sift through it that you're really excited to see this weekend?
Meridian LeFew. He went to JFG with us last year, played consistent throughout the week. He goes into the fall, and his name just kept popping up. Another guy, Xavier McCory at Providence. Left-handed hitter. Several college coaches have brought his name up. I haven't seen him in person. but really excited to see him and where he's at right now. And um, I'm excited about the weekend.
So one of the names that jumps out for me is Brian O'Connell, Eastern Guilford. He's a little bit of a do-it-all type player. Lists himself as a primary catcher 2023. He's a guy that I think in normal circumstances, and I say normal, we're probably in our new normal now, but in circumstances 3 or 4 years ago, prior to the transfer portal, prior to the COVID numbers in the back pile of players, he probably would have been off the board. I think with the way he's gone about his business and the work he's put in, he's going to end up at the right school. He's going to end up in a school where he's got a chance to contribute early and also has a chance to develop. But he's a strong physical player that I think has a chance to do some damage with his bat when he steps foot on campus. Another name I'm intrigued by, and you'll know this name, Jake Parham, 2025 shortstop from TC Roberson. I've seen a little bit about Jake, but obviously family lineage. He's got an older brother that's a senior at Roberson right now. And anytime you kind of get those family lineages, I think sometimes the younger brother will come with a similar skill set, but also may come with that little bit of that underdog chip on their shoulder, because I think the older brothers kind of keep them pressed down at times, keep their thumb on their nose, and force those guys to play with a little bit more of that chip. So I'm excited to see those guys. And really, it's just a roster top to bottom. It's got a chance to produce, college talent as these guys continue to progress. So
Got Jake Kakovic there too. It's an arm that's we've seen a couple of times, like 6'10" basketball player. He's in season right now, but he's scheduled to come throw. So excited to see where he's at as well.
And I get, that's a lot of that, what we talked about earlier. You don't know what you're going to get necessarily in January, but it's not necessarily what does Jake touch on the radar gun. It's what do we see throughout the outing? What do we see? Even when we're watching him just get loose and play long catch, how does the arm work? How does the body work? But, you talk about big bodies that are athletic. Everybody likes that tall pitcher, but typically there's a cutoff at about 6'6", where we've seen athletes be able to handle that height and move. But there's outliers. I know you played with one at NC State who actually was a dual sport guy at State, right?
Andrew Bragman.
Yep.
Could have played in the NBA, chose baseball, first rounder to the Yankees, and 6'10", but super athletic. If you're not athletic and you're that long, it's really hard. But he was obviously a phenomenal athlete.
And, that's a lot of what comes back to us is no matter, there's always what the ideal. We like our catchers to be this. We like our shortstops to be this. But really the overarching commodity in every position is athleticism. Are they movers? Can they move? Can they adapt? I was talking to a couple of pro scouts this morning, and that ability for hitters when they get to a certain level, they're going to fail. And I know you went through it in your career. Every hitter just about in the world, outside of maybe Mike Trout and a couple of the other one percenters in the big leagues, they're going to fail at some point. And are they athletic movers? And do they have the ability to make subtle adjustments, to change, to adjust, to be coachable, so that they can continue that upward trajectory of what their talent has a chance to allow them to be? But the athleticism is what plays.
No doubt.
And it gets us a little bit into that ranking stuff, too. I know you handle a girth of what we do in North Carolina with our rankings. And I'm sure you probably get a lot of, well, my exit velocity was 95 and his was 93. Why is he ranked ahead of me? But it's not. That's a piece of the puzzle. And really probably the biggest piece when I'm evaluating is quickness. And you may lean a little bit more towards strength. I want quickness, but I have to have strength. You may want strength, but you have to have quickness. What we're all talking about is athleticism and how are they going to grow? How are they going to mature? Where are they going to be in 2 years? Where are they going to be in 5 years?
And it profiles a little different at each position. This weekend with the Dodgers, we were talking about the infielders, and we're like, we got to see the slow roller. We got to, because that shows
Right.
so much athleticism for an infielder and gives us good information, and it's all part of the puzzle.
And that's a good transition for us. We talk about the East Coast Dodgers. It's an organization that has really built their rosters, and it looked like it was about one team per age group. But they kind of New York, Pennsylvania, all the way down the East Coast, and with a heavy depth in North Carolina. especially with some of their younger teams. And they were kind enough to come to North Carolina. They brought as many of their players down as they could. They used it as a chance for their players to get to know each other, get to know their coaches. They went through and gave out a lot of their gear. But we were at the Next Level Training Center in Greenville, North Carolina. Matt, I know we've been to Next Level a couple different times. Just a fantastic facility with great people. Your thoughts when we entered back into that building this year?
Love that place. So much room in there, get so much done. When I was in college, that was the first facility I went in that had an infield and a place to take BP where you could see the ball fly. And they also have tennis on the other side, so you get a break, you can walk over there and
They
really
used to
sit.
have tennis. They had one tennis where they went straight pickleball.
I'll still
Fastest
take
growing sport in America.
tennis over pickleball. But I always remember there was a young girl in there playing an adult and just wearing the adult out, and I was like, that's why I didn't play tennis.
No, we've been in there just about once a year for the past 3 or 4 years, and Trent Britt, who's the owner and operator, and his wife do a tremendous job. And it's one of those places that they do memberships, and we walk in and we're going to take over the facility about the time they're closing. And we're trying to get set up and stay out of all the members' way. Meanwhile, Trent's trying to make sure the members get everything they need to do. And as soon as the time hit, boom, he was dragging the infield for us, which we're going to throw bullpens on it. We're going to take BP on it, and then we're going to use kind of a lane for our position players to take ground balls. But he had that whole thing pristine. It's clean. Picked up. The cages are always in great shape. The turf was in great shape. So gave us a good look at the Dodgers. And the Dodgers came in, 60 to 80 players. That 2026, 2027 ups to 2023s, and gave us a good look at the organization. What do you think of the organization in total before we start diving into players?
A lot of talent on hand. They seem to grow every year and get better players every year. And from the outside looking in, it looks like they're trying to do it right and player first mentality, get better, promote their guys, and their staff was awesome. So
Yes.
helpful to us, and it made the event run so smooth, and that can never be appreciated enough from our end.
Yeah, I was, you never know really what you're going to get into when you start seeing guys this early in the season. But, from a standpoint of their pitchers, they threw strikes. They were around the zone, and that's hard to do, especially when you've made some gains. And some of their guys talking to their coaches have made some significant jumps. But they were around the zone, and then the hitters were on the barrel. And, the best group for me probably was the infielders. Just in terms of there was rhythm, they caught the ball, there was accuracy on their throws, which we don't always see in a showcase setting because they know there's a radar gun on them. And as much as we say accuracy matters, they want to just dial it up and throw it as hard as they can. It goes wherever it goes. But, they were throwing into a net because it's, we're enclosed a little bit. And really, throughout, it was really good rhythm in the feet, really good rhythm in the hands, easy exchanges, arms that carried, and, an accuracy. And so I think just the outlook of what they have a chance to be moving into the summer, I think most of their teams are going to be in really good shape. Now, pitching is going to drive the wagon. We all know that. So when they run out some of their better arms, we'll talk about some of those guys here in a minute, they're going to be in really good shape. But I think top to bottom, I was pretty impressed with the athleticism. And then I don't want to call it baseball IQ, but the understanding of what the fundamentals were and how to apply those fundamentals into the showcase setting.
Yeah, you could tell they'd been being coached. Their hitters got in the box, and it wasn't dead pull. Let me jerk and try to yank something for an exit velo. They stayed through the middle, used both sides of the field, and you could tell they had a plan when they got in there for the most part.
Well, let's jump into some of the hitters, and I'll let you kind of attack some of the guys that stood out. And again, we've already started posting on prepbaseballreport.com. If you go to the North Carolina section, you're going to see stories under our news. Yesterday was Tuesday, so as we're recording, the stats story came out. I think today we're going to have a quick hitters from you, Matt, come out about some of the hitters. Who are some of the hitters you may touch on?
First name that comes to mind is Carson Beavers, Washington State commit. Not exactly sure offhand where he's from, but left-handed hitter, super balanced in the box, a lot of quickness, and consistently barrel balls. Another guy, Manny Ramos, switch hitter, uh, pretty simple from both sides, a lot of line drives. And you touched on the defense. He stood out for me on the defensive side of it. Really relaxed, good actions, didn't try to get too quick. Um, Hit on a North Carolina kid, Luke Tavy, and I could be saying that name wrong, but I believe he goes to Wakefield High School. Left-handed hitter. His bat speed stood out for me, and he also threw a really good bullpen.
Yeah, Taby's at Wake Forest, and he was a guy that stood out. Ramos is actually an Ohio player, and like we said, these guys are from all over. It was a 2027, but the athleticism, the ease he did some things with really stood out. And like you said, the Washington State commit Carson Beavers, I know this is going to shock you. He's from Minnesota. So, kind of a running joke in the organization. Those kids from Minnesota and Iowa, I think, have won the MVP at our future games like 3 of the last 4 years. But Beavers was a guy that really understood where the barrel was. For me, one of the guys I was extremely excited to see, just in terms of how has he continued to grow and how is he going to apply his athleticism to his game, was Carter Huffman, 2026 out of New Bern. Listed as a shortstop primarily. He's probably right now a primary outfielder. We've had him for the last 2 years at the junior future games. So he's gone with our junior futures to Lake Point, and he can run. And he understands he can run, and he plays at a faster pace than a lot of people. On the infield, he fights his rhythm a little bit. He fights his hands a little bit, but he does catch the ball. He does show accuracy. The arm works better from the outfield right now. But the thing for me with Huffman is, even when you're evaluating him in the cages, and Matt, I'd love your take on him, is he's on the barrel and there's strength, but the way it translates in the game, I don't think we score him high enough in BP because of what we see sometimes. But in game, the swing plays. Does that make sense?
It does, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. He's a guy whose body continues to develop, and I think at that age, you grow a little bit, you put on some weight and strength, you fight to get that coordination back. And
Right.
he has quickness, he has strong hands, he has feel for the barrel. You watch him take BP, it may not be as loose as you wanted to see at times, but then you watch him play for a week in Lake Point, and a great example of he plays better in game than he works out.
Right.
He'll get into some at bats, and he just adjusts, and he played so well for us this year. And we were in some close games, and he would either start a rally or get a big hit and drive in some runs. And you watch him run down the line, and you're like, man, is my stopwatch right? Because he's moving.
Right. With the pitchers, so what we did with the pitchers is we basically had 2 guys going at a time, and they were going to throw for about 3 minutes. And that way, based on where they're at in their pitch counts and things like that, we weren't going to overload them a little bit. We just wanted to see 12 to 15 pitches, and we weren't going to dictate, you have to throw this, you have to throw that, especially if they haven't thrown anything other than maybe fastball change. And so kind of really let them dictate what they were going to throw. One of the first guys that I saw that threw on my side was John D. Mitchell. And Mitchell is I'm going to look it up here real quick so I don't get it screwed up. He's a 2024 out of Texas, Concordia Lutheran, Air Force commit. And it was pretty evident. You go, okay, that fits with what Air Force has done in the state of North Carolina, with watching them play on TV last year. You go, yep, that guy fits with what Air Force is doing. It was athletic. There's strength available. There's projection left. The arm works with arm speed, but it's a strong athletic movement, really direct. He spun a breaking ball pretty good. And then he got in the box, left-handed hitter, and he freaking, was strong off the barrel. So I think he's got a chance to be a dual guy when he shows up at Air Force, and they'll figure out what he's going to be, later on. The name that kind of intrigued me before we got there, and I think he threw on your side, was Peter Hans.
He
Did you have
did.
a chance to see Peter throw over there?
I did get to see Peter throw, and I know he had a little bit of an injury last year. Happened during the winter, and we didn't get to see him with the Dodgers, but seeing him. It's long, it's athletic, it's loose. The ball comes out of his hand really well. Um, Still early season, getting it dialed in, but he's going to be a fun guy to watch throughout the summer.
Yeah, those guys had about 30 guys that threw bullpens for us, and really efficient. And I keep going back to it, especially because it was January. You're kind of expecting balls to be sprayed a little bit, but simple, easy deliveries, allowing athletic guys to be athletic, direct routes, staying down the line. The arms were on time for the most part. Some guys are gonna spin it better as they get in a little bit better shape. Some guys are gonna throw harder as they get get a little bit closer to spring. The weather starts to warm up, things like that. But overall, a very impressive group, and all of their stats are up right now on PrepBaseballReport.com. You go to North Carolina and go to showcase our past event results. It's a drop down tab, and you can click on the East Coast Dodgers and find all those results. If you knew a specific player that was there and you just want to look up his, you can actually type in his name in our player finder and find all of his results posted. And we'll continue to roll reports out, Matt, here probably for the next 10 days or so. Is that about right?
Yeah, quick hitters, some TrackMan stories, and some other information coming out on the Dodgers.
And it'll be similar stuff that comes out with preseason all-states as we continue to ramp up towards the spring and see these guys. One of the other things that we're doing on the website right now is a look back at 2022. So as we finish 2022, we kind of did a countdown on some of the most viewed profiles on the site and trying maybe to figure out why they were the most viewed. Most of them you could pick out and go, yep, these guys are going to be in that. But there were a couple surprises in that top 10, just guys that had come to events and had shown well and maybe are still uncommitted. They're not top 10 players in the state. They're not necessarily even top 100 players in the state, but they've worked the system a little bit, making sure their information is getting out. College coaches are clicking on their videos, clicking on their profiles, seeing their stats as they continue to update that stuff. So those came out, and then we're also working on some of the best stories of 2022. So Matt, what were just a quick thought? We'll kind of bounce back and forth. Give me one. As you look back at 2022, a special moment or one of your best stories, or best teams or best player, or something that happened in 2022 that you think was memorable.
I know we both love the high school coverage in this state, and a moment that stands out for me is West Forsyth, East Forsyth. I believe it was the last regular season game, conference championship on the line. Xavier Isaac, first rounder to Tampa Bay, hits the first pitch of the game over the center field fence, just crushes it. Only hit, only run of the game. But also in that game, Peyton Martin comes in relief for West Forsyth, and also signed last year, and he comes in and hits 94 several times, and pretty impressive that you can go to one high school game and see that much talent on the field in North Carolina.
Yeah, and what's even more impressive about that one, you talk about Xavier. Xavier was a name everybody knew. Xavier's a name everybody wanted to see because he had missed at least 12 months, maybe even a little bit longer, getting over an ankle injury. And so just the timing of his coming back, he missed the fall before his senior year. He missed the summer before his senior year. Scouts are kind of salivating, what's he going to be? And he shows up at our pro case, and you go, okay, yep, that's a guy they're going to have to follow. Now, did either one of us put a first-round grade on him after that day? Probably not. But when I saw him in the spring, I was, my number was pretty high. When you saw him a couple different times, your number was pretty high. I don't know that either one of us said, are we willing to give him, first round? That's not our job. So nobody has to grade us on that. But as guys are going in there to see Xavier, now all of a sudden a pop-up right-hander who everybody thought was a shortstop the summer before, and he's committed to East Carolina as a position player with maybe he can pitch. But then the arm takes off, and the Dodgers go, yep, that's the guy. We're going to take him. And he ends up signing. And so I think that's one of the great things about the development in the state is that as you're playing other good players, it's giving the players on those fields opportunity. And so, yeah, really, a great story right there. And for me, you talked about Xavier a little bit. Mine was Brooks Brandon. We've known Brooks really since he was in eighth grade. And his dad is a baseball guy and has a facility that we use for some of our events. And we went in there and saw Brooks as a freshman. Man, he can really receive, and he's the only freshman on the team that's got a chance to win a state championship. And he's kind of holding his own with them. And they get into the state championship series, and was it North Lincoln as just got hot and kind of left a bad taste in Randleman's mouth and left a bad taste in Brooks's mouth. But he's got 3 more years. Then the next year they're rolling, and COVID hits. And boom. First 2 years, no state titles, and really a season and a half because of COVID. You get to the third year, and it's still a shortened down season. They got some other rules in place, but Randleman does get that title. And then they're bouncing just about every one of their key cogs back for the next year. And you're going, okay, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to have a chance to win a state title. It's just a matter of how good are they going to be. They got some young arms. They're going to have to pitch some key innings. And then all of a sudden you look up at about the middle of the season, and Brooks is leading the country, I think, at that point in RBIs. He's well over halfway to the state record in terms of home runs. He's hitting like 700. And so you start kind of following that. But in my mind, I'm thinking there's no way he's going to get close to some of those records. So they're not going to pitch to him. But as we go watch them play, the offense is so good, they don't have a choice. They're hitting him high in the order. If he gets on base, the guy behind him doubles and Brooks scores. You start flipping the order, and every time he comes up, there's guys on base. And every time he comes up with guys on base, bang, he finds a barrel. But really cool story watching him. He became our PBR State Player of the Year. He was one of the finalists for the PBR National Player of the Year. He was a PBR All-American. He broke the North Carolina state record for RBIs. He tied his dad's home run record, which I think is pretty cool. And he broke the state record for hits, which was one of those that was set when I was playing. I didn't think anybody get close to it. And, he went and set that. So for me, that was one of the most memorable things of 2022.
He had such a great year. Great kid, works unbelievably hard. I know when we'll go in their facility to do something, he's always there before or after training, working. And Randleman was a fun team to watch. Great place to watch a game. Community gets behind that team, and I know home runs are impressive, but they're driving that many runs in a high school season. Especially when you run rule some teams to get enough at bats to do that is just unreal.
Yeah, I think the story, one of the stories that we posted on the website, the best of 2022, we did one on Brooks, but I posted one yesterday on Randleman's season. And I think they played 34 games, and they threw like 12 shutouts, and I think they had like 19 run rule games. So to get all those hits, to get all those RBIs, they're flipping the order because they're scoring runs, but very rarely did they play 6 innings. So it was, even more impressive of the opportunities he got. He had to take advantage of them, and he did.
I wish we could have seen those guys in Providence play at the end of the year.
Yes. Yeah, and we wrote about Providence too, and was it the greatest high school season of all time? For me, it wasn't. They had a great year, but I'm biased because of the age group I grew up in. I saw the New Hanover teams in the mid-'90s. And you're going to have you may have to go 100-0 to even get on that list of what I saw those teams do, and that's because there's honest bias, But I think they went 33-0, 34-0, and rode 2 really good arms, and the offense was good. Probably wasn't a great offense, but they scored runs because they knew who they were. Lead off single, lead off, and then all of a sudden the guy gets on second. You're bunting him over to third. You're hitting behind him. You key hit, 2-strike hit in the gap. They did all of those things, and it wasn't a one-off thing. It was every game throughout the year. And even when they played West Forsyth in the regional semifinals, leadoff runner gets on first in the 6th, and there's going to be pressure. We're either going to run or we're going to bunt, but we're going to put some pressure on you. And it leads to a pickoff throw that advances the runner to third. Now they got runner on third, no out. So that's how they score the winning run. So it was one of those special years for them. Was that the best high school team you've seen?
I think so. I mean, them and Randleman, but this year both those clubs were impressive. Randleman had so much firepower on offense and obviously good arms as well. And then Providence, very talented on the mound, maybe not high profile guys offensively, but they were confident and they could win a close game. You could put them down early. They were going to come back. They super confident. Like I
Those
said,
the two arms on the front were dominant, and that's a separator just because of how dominant they were. I mean, they had Division One commits behind them that didn't get to throw a lot because those two guys, Jerzenbeck and
Foray.
Michael Foray, those two guys were so good. But it's a testament to the team too, because when balls were put in play, they were clean with it. They made plays and they limited pitch counts, and those guys were able to roll out for 5, 6, 7 innings every time out. It wasn't like you were watching pitch counts getting to the 100. Well, you got the pitch count number now. You weren't getting to 105. Those guys were throwing complete games in 90, 95 pitches. So able to bounce back, able to be good. Give me one more. What else you got best of 2022? Anything else stick out?
Our pro case last year. We from the older guys, Xavier being there, kind of his first showing, coming off the injury, and then several young guys there that you would hear the pro scouts comment like, really good underclass roster you have here as well. And I know we both love that event, but just the talent from top to bottom, we were able to get there last year. Chance Mako was there. He'll be fun to watch this spring, and exciting time for us early in the year.
Yeah, anytime you profile an eventual first rounder, when everybody wasn't sure, that was his first outing. He kind of kept everything under cover and under wraps, and boy, it was an impressive outing. But we had a bunch of dudes, 92 or better, and even our younger guys. I think every younger guy we brought there ended up at East Coast Pro. So, and that's one of the things we're trying to do for the pro scouts is give them an early look at the seniors, but also, hey, you guys haven't started on this class yet. We're a little ahead of you, but here's some guys to think about for East Coast Pro. And then, all those guys got there. To piggyback off that, my last big one for the 2022 season would be the team we took to Atlanta for the future games. Similar to what you're talking about with the pro case, the buzz around the roster, and honestly trying to keep that roster intact the final 2 weeks, because we had some guys really starting to show well before they went down there, and we're going, hey, if you commit, you can't go to Atlanta. And just, I know, but it's hard to fill a roster on 5 days. So just give me 5 days, commit when you're down there. The big coming out was probably Briggs McKenzie. I think you had seen it. You were extremely high on him. We had not seen that velocity. We'd seen 84, 86. We'd heard some 87s, 88s. We'd seen the breaking ball. We'd seen the pitchability. We'd seen the calmness. But he gets matched up against Team Missouri on day 3, who may have been one of the best hitting teams at the event. And, for 2 innings, anything he threw, missed bats. In the zone, out of the zone, up, down, hard, soft, it didn't matter. And he was just in complete control. His outing, Anderson Nance's outing kind of solidified his number 1 ranking when there's some people knocking on the door. The athleticism, the tick up in velocity again for him there. One of my favorites, Walker McDuffie, is a lower slot guy, a multi-slot guy, a slider guy, a sink guy, and we almost had to extend an inning so he could throw more, which doesn't happen because you're facing good hitters. But his first inning, he threw 6 pitches. He got 2 outs on 2 pitches in the next inning. So he's gone all the way down to Atlanta. He's going to throw 2 innings. And he's got thrown 8 pitches. So we almost had to, say, hey, we're going to let 2 more hitters hit so that he can throw more. Fortunately, I think we booted a ball or something. And so he got extended a little bit. But, it's a guy whose stuff just in a bullpen setting isn't going to electrify anybody. It's really intriguing because it's a quick arm and he moves so well. But you put him in a game setting and, hitters don't want to face him. There's not a whole lot of want to, especially from right-handed guys that get in the box against him. And that stood out there, and it eventually led to him into Chapel Hill.
He's not going to walk anybody, that's for sure.
Right.
Super competitive. And then Cade Morris was on that team. He shows up, throws for us at Campbell, throws day 1 down there, commits to NC State not long after.
Another one of those dual tall guys we talked about. Elite mover, elite athleticism that kind of handles the 6'9" frame.
Yeah, really firm downhill. Jason Parsons comes, I believe, to a Raleigh event.
Yep.
take him down there and handles his own against quality arms and works his tail
Did a
off
great
behind the
job
plate.
receiving guys.
Yeah. Um, it was a fun club, and I know he's a South Carolina kid, but we both love Soto from down there. Just I could watch that kid take ground balls every day. So fun
Yeah,
to
yeah.
watch.
And it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does this spring too, because it'll be a hot commodity. As I still don't think he's committed. I mean, I could
No,
be off on that. Obviously, it's a South Carolina player, so not quite as dialed in day to day on what they're doing down there. But again, his athletic routine, his athletic rhythm stands out in showcases, and then in gameplay, it's even faster. And he was one of those guys too. He's quiet, but he has that charm and that ability where guys in the dugout were kind of drawn to him. And so it's neat to see when those guys, get a chance to be around guys of equal playing ability. They still have that, and he did. He's kind of got that glue guy type thing to him. As long as he's kind of around the game, those guys are drawn to him.
yeah, the camaraderie of that club was really good. That was a fun week and great group of kids, and looking forward to going back this year.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, Matt, we're going to try and do this every week or so, especially as we're going through the winter, and then we get into the spring. We'll get more into the high school season. We're a little rusty, but I don't think we sucked at this, so we'll try and do it again next week.
Yeah, if Kirby takes an NFL job this week, will we still do it next week?
No, we're done. We're done. Well, I'll be in a ditch somewhere, so you have to come get me. So, no. He's Matt Payne. I'm Brandon Hall. We'll see you here at the PBR North Carolina podcast next week. Thanks, guys.